Hello and welcome to Artefact Live, where we look at the art and science of storytelling. This, believe it or not, I say this every week because I'm surprised it goes on every week, but this is now week 15, which is absolutely amazing. And I sat down the other day and I looked at what we've covered to this point, and it's starting to look like a library about storytelling. And every single week, I can see about 10 more weeks that we can expand upon. So, and the one thing I'll guarantee from tonight, the exact same thing will happen tonight, because tonight my guest is a colleague and friend called Tom Stanhope. And Tom is a filmmaker. And like last week when we had the amazing Tom Morley on, there are so many ways you can go with this that normally we would have a bit of a planning session. And we have had a chat, haven't we, Tom? You're in the background. They can't see you yet. We have had a chat, but there is so much to cover that it's I don't know where it's going to go. So bear with us. So anyway, as always, last week we had Tom. Now, because of the technology issues, which incidentally I got to the bottom of, it was actually at the junction box out in the main street we had a problem. So we shouldn't have any problems tonight. It's all been fixed, and I know we're cooking on gas because I can see the improvement in the stream, even on LinkedIn, which is quite astonishing. So I can see it and I'm very happy with it. So thank goodness we got to the bottom of that. So I'm looking forward to, you being able to hear us all night and actually for us to have a full show after last week's cut. Now, just in case you missed it, my name's Scott McArthur and I host Artefact. And I do that because I'm fascinated by story. And last week we were talking about one of the most fascinating aspects of it, and that was about music. And Tom Morley, the former member of the band Scrittability and an absolutely brilliant entertainer and team builder, was just getting into the exciting bit when the power cut. So there is a video available if you go into the website, www.youtube.com/Scott McArthur on YouTube there. However, he's coming back in January. But what Tom did do, and he did it very well, was he started to talk about how we can look at things from different perspectives. And we considered some writing by various people who'd worked in that space about how music and the arts generally can be used to really inspire people. Now, remember, if you've never been here before, you might not have heard this before, but one of the key things that I believe about stories is this, and I think it is so important. I think that facts sell, but facts, I got that wrong, didn't I? Typical, got my own bloody saying wrong. Facts tell, stories sell. Facts tell, stories sell. Now, I've been banging that drum for a number of years. I first spoke about it publicly when I did my first TEDx. And it's something that I think that a lot of individuals have to get their heads around. But more important than that, I want to see more governments getting their heads around it. I want to see more of it on the radio. I said a few weeks ago that I was disappointed in how many stories about people who are struggling in this environment are actually on the radio and the television. There's all these facts they keep throwing at us, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting fact fatigue, and I'm an ex-scientist. I'm getting sick of it. So I think that we need to start telling more and more stories. Now, I think BBC 5 Live have been doing a good job at least once a week bringing in stories, but I want to hear more of those. And that takes me to this week, and it takes me to my theme of the week, which is about video and film. And actually, the difference between the two of them, I'll talk to my guest about that, because I think I know the difference, but I might have made it up. So we'll have to talk about that, Tom. But we're going to look at video and film, and I think this is the time for video and film. There's never been a time like this before. In the context of the pandemic, of course, lots of people are now working from home. When we go back to work, I don't like using phrases like the new norm and the new next and the new whatever they call it. I think we will go back to work, and I think most of us will go back to what we were before. But there will be aspects of it that will change significantly, and there'll be aspects that will change completely. And I think part of that is the rise of video and film. Now, we've always been told by social media groups that film really mattered, and particularly groups like, like on YouTube, and hello, the YouTube people, nice to see you. They've always told us that video was important, but YouTube's growth, which is significant, is still not the same as growth of other social media platforms. We still prefer to use text, and we still prefer to write little stories. But I think YouTube's day, you might think it's already here. There's so much opportunity on YouTube for people to grow how they tell their stories on video. And that's why I'm so excited about this week. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my special guest. I'm just going to put you on the screen here, Tom, if I can hit the right button this time. There. Good evening.
Hello, Scott. It's very good to be here. Thank you.
It's quite odd because Tom and I have known each other. How long have we known each other?
I was thinking about this. Because we first spoke. Gosh, this was I think it was about 3+ years ago, wasn't it? About that week, because we were still living up in Worcestershire at the time, and I very vividly remember talking to you for the first time, and I was at my mum and dad's house, and I was standing up at the top of a field because that was the only place I could get reception. about a show reel. Yeah. And I was sort of, that kind of go, yes, I can hear you. It's fine. I'm a very professional individual with an extremely, professional workplace, and I'm not standing in a cow pants. And
Anyway, so what is it you do then, Tom? Give her what do you call people who watch live streams? Simulcasters, simulcates. What do you call them?
I don't know. I think this is an interesting point. I think the vocabulary of what we are is developing, isn't it? And I think this perhaps tells its own story. I think we are kind of, whilst it feels like this stuff has been with us forever, it's really this is absolutely an emerging way of communicating. To sort of take this back a step, I've been in video one way or another for almost 20 years, and my sort of my path into video wasn't a particularly clear one, but over that time I've worked within the sort of the corporate comm space. I've done some TV. I've even dabbled with the idea of getting into film with a couple of pitches that we took out to Cannes, and there's some great stories from there.
We're going to have to explore that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm writing that down. Come back to Cannes. Yeah.
That never went anywhere. The only thing that I came away from Cannes with was an enormous credit card bill, which took a very long time to deal with. It was a lot of fun. But no, so my thing is I help speakers, I help solo entrepreneurs, I help experts use video to grow their business. And I've always been a great believer in video right from the start. But over the last sort of 5, 6, 10 years, we've seen the development and growth of online video.
Yeah.
And what that has meant is that we are now, it's a democratized medium, whereas before the idea of us going live on video as business owners would have been just pie in the sky. It would have cost tens of thousands of pounds to do when I first started out. Now, any business owner with a phone can connect and go live and use live video content to connect with people alongside the more traditional pre-record stuff. And I think this opens up a whole world of kind of storytelling opportunities. And I think your point that stories sell is kind of absolutely, there has to be the right point, the right kind of attitude to take, because having the tools that we have at our disposal, everybody can use it. So in order to differentiate yourself, I think you have to be a better storyteller than the next person in order for your messaging to cut across and cut through.
Yes. Thanks for the introduction, and I think that helps because it's going to we can build on so many aspects of that. I think the thing that I'd be interested in your perspective in this, Tom, but some of this just shocks me every time I think about it, because if you look at there's been research in this field where they've done things like they've got like little cheap things from charity shops, and they've bought them for 50 pence, and then they've got a writer to put a story around it, and they've sold it for £50 because of that story, and that then scales up, because when I was working in a proper job, working in multi-million-pound bids for work and stuff, it was always the stories that sold them. It was always so obvious, but I still don't come across very many individuals, never mind companies, who are comfortable with telling their own stories. I mean, and it strikes me it's similar to it, because one of the things that if you know Tom's work, Tom's, and we'll talk more about this later, Tom, but Tom's work is trying to help people use video to build their business and create a better business. That's fair, Tom, isn't it?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And even that, it's so rare that I mean, people are scared to do it, you know. And I mean, I do get that. I mean, I've been through that. I'm not pretending that isn't a real thing. But to be honest, I think that exists with storytelling as well. Almost the same resistance to saying, I remember the time when, or, you know, this pen reminds me, or, you know, people somehow, and when I put, I mean, I've changed the way I do my social media since lockdown. I've been building my story bank. I'm doing it quite deliberately, Tom. You know, I'm building up all my, you know, I'm going back, like I call it story archaeology. So I go back and I've got a spreadsheet and I'm writing the years on it. There's quite a lot of years on it now, Tom, don't tell anybody. But then I'm saying, well, what happened that year? And I'm using, you know, news items or family events or experiences to jog my memory. And I'm creating these stories. And almost every week now, I'm getting feedback from people saying, oh, you're telling great stories. Where do you get them all from? And it's like, my life.
Yeah.
And it's great because the good thing is, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of your work, I don't need to remember. I mean, I need to remember the stories in the first place because I've probably forgotten them, you know, that, and that's why I'm doing archaeology. But once I've remembered the story and I've written a little bit down or I've made a little video, boom, you know, you've got the story. And I've now got over 400 stories.
Wow.
On that spreadsheet.
Oh,
400. Yeah, but I always had them, but I didn't know I had them. You know what I mean? I didn't know it.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because I think once you start to build up a bank like that, there's a sort of almost a compounding effect where you get a little bit of a taste of the success of telling a few stories and having that moment where people lean forward side. You can see the sort of the readjustment in the seat as people, as you sort of push through the kind of the expectations they have of, and it could be in a sales setting. Yeah. And if you can sort of prime people with a story,
yes, and
get them thinking about what you've got to offer in a different way, you're already far more likely to be connecting with that person than sort of anybody else doing it who are trying to just sell on facts. And, you know, it's this, you know, talking about benefits, and, you know, whilst benefits and features are all very important, if you can make those benefits interesting through the use of a story, then I think you're winning.
Yes.
Certainly, you're improving your chances of being better at connecting with somebody you'd like to work with. I think there's also with stories, you sort of there's a lovely effect, and I've actually found it a lot this year as I've been much more kind of vocal with my own stories, and we'll probably get on to why I hid those away for ages and why I felt reticent to talk about them.
We will,
but you know. It's like a red velvet rope. There are certain people who get you, and you welcome them past the rope. If they like your stories and they get what you're saying, you know they're your people.
Yes.
And if there are people who go, "Oh, that's a bit weird," oh no, yes. I don't like that's what a funny story. You go, "Fine, okay, we're not right to work together." It's like a filter.
Yes,
it cuts out so much crap.
Yes, I think I used to be, and to some extent, I still struggle with one of the things that is in the Entrepreneur's Guidebook, and that is find your niche. Right now, I think I have struggled about it, and maybe that's because I was never clear what my niche was. Maybe, but what I've also found during lockdown, I don't know if you've found this, I've found these incredible micro niches. I mean, some of the people who are watching and may know I also do a music live broadcast on a Friday night about a venue in Glasgow that closed in 1985, right? And on that Facebook group, and I don't know if there's anyone on here that knows anything about Facebook, but I have got 8,300 members on that Facebook group.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's growing at 100 people a week. Now that's a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. I mean, it is so small, that to me, okay, it's not scientific, Tom, but I think in that world, if you pick what you just said, that's really wise, because if you find the audience that like you, go for it, But you can have multiple niches, can't you? You don't need to have one niche, you know.
Yeah, completely. And I've been sort of thinking about this group, and so thinking about the group that you've been talking about, and with 8,000 people in, and think of all the people that went through the doors of that venue over all the years, and all the memories and all the stories that were built there, and all the kind of the fond rememberings of kind of smoky atmospheres, sticky floors, great music. You know, probably if it's like any of the venues I've been to over these, quite bad beer. There was no beer. There was no beer. It was actually a dry music venue in Glasgow.
I mean, you couldn't make it up, could you? I mean, it's you know.
Well, like, but those are the places that have that. You're tapping into. It's not just do you remember this place. It's you're instantly tapping into all these internal stories and memories that people have, and I think that must be why. Because actually, the ability to get together with people and go, "Did you see X on Y?" And go, "Yes, wasn't it great?" Or "Oh, wasn't it awful?" Or there's instant community, but instant nostalgia and memory, and those really, really powerful things to tap into. Particularly if you're looking to find a niche, and if you can have something like that. What a wonderful audience to be able to work with and grow with.
Oh yeah, we'll get on to film in a minute, but there was one chap who posted something last week on who was the worst support act you ever saw at the Glasgow Apollo. There has been 1,000 comments on that stream.
I bet.
When it goes in again about social media, 1,000 comments on a Facebook group. You know, okay,
that's great.
I'm not a 21-year-old YouTuber or anything, but I mean, quite incredible. Anyway, let's use that as a segue to the world of film, because I know we share a certain amount of geekiness about film. I am a big fan of film, and as I said earlier, I've got into this world. I was kind of planning. Well, you helped me. We did some videos together, didn't we? And incidentally, I don't even know if you know this, Tom. One of my videos that I did with Tom was about it was called a video about a chap called Joseph Knight. Do you remember that story?
I remember it very well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that video, Joseph Knight, incidentally, was the first slave released who won his own freedom actually in Scotland. Only the second in the United Kingdom. And it's a long story, which I won't tell now. If you want to see it, it's on my YouTube channel. But that video was picked up by a playwright. It's also picked up by some other filmmakers in Scotland, and it's been edited and used with my permission all over the place. It's really done well.
That's amazing.
And the playwright has actually said there's a video on, if you go into YouTube and just Google YouTube Joseph Knight, you'll see his video there, and I think he's had about 5,000 hits or something. But him and I are going to be talking and collaborating on this when he actually makes a full play. And he's quite a famous guy. He's not unfamous. He's quite famous. So it's absolutely astonishing, Tom, what can happen when you put these things out there. Astonishing.
You don't know where the right stories, the right story can land with if it finds the right person, and you never quite know where these things are going to go. And you hear these kind of tales all the time of kind of people telling short stories, or their story just connecting with the right person at the right time. But I think in order to do that, in order to increase the chances of making that connection, you've got to be telling it consistently. You've got to be telling your story. You've got to know your stories well, and you've got to be unafraid to tell them, and know when what in is in your toolkit. Because I see it as a toolkit, and actually from kind of discussions with you and discussions with other people that I kind of know and have been lucky enough to spend time with and work with, that sort of Swiss Army knife of stories that you carry around with you it's knowing which story fits which moment, and knowing when to deploy it, and having them so well kind of embedded in your I really hesitate to use the word marketing, but actually that's precisely what it is. I don't know why I hesitate to use the word marketing, partly because I think that story on some level should be more elevated than marketing. But the truth is, marketing is storytelling when it's good. And when it's bad, it's just kind of banging a drum and say, buy, you know, oi, we're here, buy this stuff, and, you know, connect.
And thanks, Joe, for the feedback on Joseph Knight. That's lovely of you saying that. That's very kind of you. Joe also asked a question here about, I wonder if we ever find our niche in our lifetime. Oh, I think we can ruffle for that together a bit, Tom. You know, well, you have a go first. What do you think? What do you think, Tom?
Yes, is the short answer, but you have to work at it. I think you have to be very clear about your audience, very clear about who you like working with, who you like spending time with, and once you are clear about that niche, then you work to create content that serves that audience. And I think you increase your chances of finding that spot, that comfortable niche, by research. Actually, you know, a lot of, you know, some people are lucky enough to kind of fall into it, and very often I think that's driven by, you know, your passions. If you have particular passions or interests, you can find your way into serving a particular niche. But often as business owners, we are, you know, big, large business or small, you know, you kind of, I think being a generalist is hard work, because actually you've got, you know, you're trying to find a kind of a lowest common denominator sort of message that will connect with the most people in the most effective way. But I think that's hard work. I'd much rather have 1,000, you know, I can't think who wrote the book. 1,000, who wrote the book, 1,000 Raving Fans? Oh yeah, I know the book. I can't remember the writer of that. It's one of my characteristics, Tom, that I have someone intelligent that is no better than I am at remembering things. So we meander around the subjects, pretending we know what we're talking about, but it's actually, this is one of my USPs, you know, this is it, you know, I don't remember, you know. I've got lots of general knowledge, but, you know, and I remember lots of stuff, but I don't remember names very well, which is dreadful, you know. I spent a lot of my time going, oh, I recognise that person, or I remember who wrote this book, and then Una is like, it was this person, or as she frequently tells me, I find myself pointing at people in the street and going, oh, was that and she goes, no, that was just some random bloke, that was not anybody famous.
Yeah, I get that all the time.
And even when it comes to famous people, I spent a good hour talking to a Hollywood actor when I was at Cannes, had no idea who I was talking to, and then asked them what they did.
Excellent. Who was it? Can you remember who it was now?
John Hurt. No,
my God.
Whichever the non-British one. The American. Is it John or William Hurt? I can't.
Oh dear. You'll need to look it up. That's quite funny. I quite like that. So let me pick the baton up there.
William.
Who was the name?
It was William Hurt.
William Hurt. Right. Okay. Fisher King, William Hurt. That was him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Very good movie as well. Well, we might come back to Fisher King because it's quite a good example of a movie that really gets it. Joe, to answer your question from my perspective, I think it's a really difficult question, but one that we're not encouraged to do in the corporate world, because I mean, I was an HR director and, you know, various big companies, and you were actually rewarded for being a generalist, you know, because you needed to know about the whole business. And it's only when I went, you know, set up my own business that I really realized that is difficult, because when a buyer looks at one person as an organization, or a couple, as me and Samantha have, they don't want us to say we do the whole suite of corporate interventions. Even if you can do them, they don't want it. They want you to be a specialist. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I struggled with it, if I'm absolutely honest. I mean, when I went into my speaking business, I was making movies with Tom about, I was calling myself, and I don't know if it was terrible, but I do cringe when I say it now. I called myself the transformation sculptor. And that was because people were telling me I had to give myself a name, and then I, you know, and it's not terrible, but then I thought, wait a minute, that's not what I am, and I still struggle with it. And I now say, you know, I talk about the future of work, and my aim, my goal is to put the human back in human resources, and I think that's working, because I'm getting more traction with that. Now, did I plan that? Did I know that was going to work? You know, I didn't. It would be complete folly, Joe, for me to say that was planned, because it just wasn't. But I think, though, as Tom said, I think if you pay attention and I mean, I'll tell you another one story just quickly, Tom, before we talk specifically about film. We mentioned my music thing a few minutes ago. How that started, right? Absolutely, honestly, how that started. When I was a kid, still doing it now, but when I was a kid, I started to collect my concert tickets. And I would have them in a frame, right? And I would have them on the wall, and I would just have them there all the time. You know, I'd just have them all the time. And I just loved them because it was the gigs I'd been at. And I was proud of the fact I'd been to these gigs. It was a big deal back in the 80s if you'd been to see a band, you know, it's not like it is today. And then one day I was talking to a guy in the pub. He was a journalist. He'd been to the same venue, and he said, "Send me a picture of your tickets." I did. And 2 weeks later, there was a centre spread in one of the Scottish Sunday magazines about me and my tickets. That's how it started. And it's just gone boom, right? You know, and it's like, how on earth did that happen? I don't know. It was luck. I do know it was luck. It was luck. So
I think this is about indulging passions, though, isn't it? I think actually niche comes through either hard work or passionate, or sort of indulging a passion. And I think you've got two things going on here. You've got one which has come out of something that you love,
yeah,
and the other stuff which you're just saying now, you're kind of working at it and evolving. And I think kind of it's always easier when it comes out of a sort of a passion or a hobby, I think, because you found the niche first, then you realize, oh, actually, I know an awful lot about this. I could share that.
Yeah,
it's coming at the same thing from two different directions, I think.
Yes. No, that's interesting observation, Tom. Yeah, I think we could have a whole show on that.
Yes.
I say that every week. You know, I say it nearly every week. I say it. You know, I had a show. I think it was my third or fourth show, and all it was the importance of the first line. That was it, right? And we filled the 45 minutes with no problem at all. You know, and we thought, oh my goodness, we could do another one. And I was just talking to myself at the time. I don't think even anyone was tuning in at the time. But it's amazing the depth you can go in this stuff. And I think that is becoming apparent with film more and more. So let me set a context here, because I think, and obviously, Tom, you're the expert, but there's a context here that I think is worth just saying. Obviously, with the coronavirus stuff and, you know, how we're all working from home, you know, video is something we're using more in our, you know, personal time, you know, our downtime, whether we're at home because we want to be or because we've been told to be at home. Video is also more and more being used in the social channels, and we've got the growth of social media like Twitch, which some of you may or may not have heard of. Hello, Twitch. I'm streaming there just now. But these are all video-based content sites. And within that, though, there are things happening that, and I'd love your view on this, Tom, but I'm not sure about it, but it's happening, and I think I need to go with the flow. So, for example, if you look at the corporate side of this sort of LinkedIn community, and hi, LinkedIn people that are watching, that has gone from them encouraging us to do what they call raw videos, you know, so to pump in unique material before you put it on the other channels, because LinkedIn is all about dwell time, which means they want you to stay on their channel. But in the last few weeks, they've moved to what I think is a dumbed down way of thinking about it. But I think I might be wrong, because what they're saying is you need to do videos if you want full engagement with the LinkedIn mathematics. They call it the algorithm. You have to do videos that are less than a minute long. And my first reaction to that was, oh, for goodness sake, it's going the way of Twitter and going the way of Instagram. But actually, on reflection, I think the restriction that brings, because there's nothing worse than blue sky thinking, right? If you give two creatives no restrictions, an effing nightmare. You imagine me and you, Tom, sitting in a room with no restrictions. I mean, we'd end up doing some, you know, Lord of the Rings blend with Star Trek, Dune, and whatever, you know, Monty Python. You know, it would just be a complete mess. So I'm watching what's happening on there now. The LinkedIn algorithm's not picking it up yet. They're not picking up the good short videos, because I mean, I've seen some of the world class ones that are out there and I'm not getting loads of views yet. But it's going to happen, I think. So that aspect of it. But the way we watch, and then there's the big stuff, and I mean, I don't know what you think of that, Tom. Is that something you've thought about, or
no?
Is it...
I think this comes down to, because actually the sort of the LinkedIn and Facebook are that sort of stream based, it's stream based for feed based content platforms, and YouTube is a more library based content platform. So we go to YouTube and the search bar is kind of king. The search bar on that front page.
Yeah.
I mean, you go there and you usually go with a purpose, or you're going to pick up on content from creators that you've kind of found and that you've liked and you subscribe to. So you go to YouTube for quite specific things most of the time, or to have questions answered.
Yeah.
LinkedIn and Facebook, I think you're as you scroll up and down, you are likely to be exposed to different sort of forms and styles of content. And I think the shorter form content suits a feed-based platform more than it suits a kind of a library platform like YouTube. And if I was to go onto YouTube now and just go onto the homepage, the average viewed video length, so you've got 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 60 minutes, 10, or the videos that are being promoted to me based on I'm assuming it's based on my viewing habits. But if I was to go onto an incognito window and go to YouTube, let's see what it's just generally promoting. So, so actually 1, 2, 3 of the top 8 videos that are being promoted just to a random non-specific kind of audience. Over half of the ones on the homepage on YouTube are over 15 minutes long.
Right. Okay.
So I think what you've got is different platforms have different expectations and different sort of viewing styles from the audience, and so I can understand why LinkedIn is perhaps looking to encourage or optimize for shorter form content. It's interesting that with sort of live streaming, Facebook obviously likes live streaming quite a lot, and seems to give quite a lot of reach to people live stream. I'm just going to turn it off because that's really distracting. So I just think it's particularly because LinkedIn is we have to be honest, LinkedIn is pretty late to the video game.
Yes.
And I think it's working out. It seems to me that it's working out what its audience wants, and I think the shorter form content, I'm not hugely surprised actually thinking about it, because initially I think my reaction was the same as you. I was thinking, oh, here we go again. It's more dumbing down. But I think LinkedIn, funnily enough, I think it sits in terms of the way people use it somewhere between Facebook and Instagram. I think it's not super short form, and it's not kind of it's not somewhere where people choose to live. People of a certain age choose to live their life, and whereas I think LinkedIn, because it is predominantly a professional platform, I think that I imagine that the way it gets used is subtly different to kind of other feed-based platforms like Facebook, and so I would be interested in finding out where things are in sort of 6 months' time with video content. I imagine your instinct is absolutely right to think that this is probably a good a good bet to take for LinkedIn in terms of content production.
I think the thing that has become very clear to me, and I very pretentiously call it Scott's Law. See the deadpan? Look, see, deadpan. Take myself very seriously. I call it Scott's Law, and it's this. It's that the story is the edit. When we're talking film, when we're talking video today, aren't we? We're talking films and videos. And I've mean, come on, I've got an expert here. I've been editing film for 6 months, and I have absolutely been through the mill with it. It's hard work, but it really gets you into thinking about the psyche of the people that are in your audience. It really makes you think. You know, it's like you can't do, and I'm still seeing this all over every platform, particularly with corporates. Good evening, my name is John Smith, and I'm going to be talking to you today about 3 things. And those 3 things are there. Yeah, thank you for listening to those. It is everywhere. And there's some of these professional speakers training people to speak like that. It's the opposite. I don't know if there's a word for it. Is there an opposite of engagement, anti-engagement? You know,
I can think of a few words, Scott, but I won't use them. Yeah,
how to piss an audience off in 5 seconds, you know. Yeah. And you need the contemporary audience. And I don't know. I mean, there's part of me thinks, is this dumbing down? But if you don't grab an audience, particularly on the shorter form videos, within 5 seconds, you're that word. They will not watch it. They will not watch it. And the data's there. If you're like what I used to be like, you know, facts tell. You go and look for the data. It's there. So you need to think. And it's and Tom Morley, who's been was a guest on last week, who has made music videos, and he's a professional videographer as well as being a musician. He said to me, put your best bit first. He said, it doesn't matter if it doesn't even make sense.
Nope.
Put your best bit first. And if you watch people like Simon Sinek, he puts his best bits. He's got a professional editor telling him how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's boom every time now on LinkedIn, boom every time on YouTube. So I think that, I don't know if you've felt the same, but I think if you're not thinking like that, you're not going to get engagement. You're just not going. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I think you have to be very honest with yourself when you're creating this kind of content. That, you know, when we're not. The truth is, we're not creating high art. We're looking to get good ideas into people's brains as quickly as possible.
I'm offended by that. My videos are high art.
Well, they are, and I think you are combining both high art with high.
Oh, you should be a politician.
No, look here, Scott. I look at it.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah, no.
This habit of doing the Boris Johnson impressions, and it's bad enough hearing them on the radio without you doing them. Yeah, absolutely.
It's no. So I think kind of the edit is just presenting information. Even if the information was absolutely amazing and kind of insightful and wonderful, and I think a lot of the content out there just simply isn't.
Yeah.
Unless you are taking that wonderful information and packaging it up in a way that gets people interested and connects your content with their needs, you know, no one's going to be doing any, you know, no one's going to be tuning in. No. And if the purpose of video content is to either, you know, and this is purely from a commercial point of view. I'm not talking about video content for creative purposes. I'm talking when I say what I'm going to say next. This is talking it from a business perspective. If video content for your business isn't saving you time or making you money ultimately, then as a business marketing activity or a business content creation activity, you need to take a long, hard look at it and go, why am I doing this? Because if you're looking to be efficient with your time in your business, wasting time editing stuff or creating content that isn't doing one of those 2 things just is crazy. You could be doing way many other, you know, things that are actually going to work.
Yes.
But you've got to be, but in order to get that, you've got to be so clear about the message, but also so clear about how you're delivering the message and what you're saying. Put your best stuff up front. Yeah. That's the way to do it.
I like Peter reckons you should be on Spitting Image, my friend.
I've got one impression I can do. That's it.
You're not doing it on this show, right? Do it on your own show. That's enough. Don't encourage him. Don't encourage them. Now, again on the editing front, there was a book that you recommended to me a long time ago. This book, folks.
Ah, yes, it's a winner.
Right, in the blink of an eye, by a chap called Walter. It's Murch, isn't it? Or is it Murch? Murch. And in that book, he talks about he was the editor on Apocalypse Now.
Yeah,
and it is astonishing how much effort. It was something like, now I might have the numbers wrong. I can't, they're not in the forefront of my cerebral cortex, but it was basically the film. Say the film's 3 hours long. They filmed something like 500 hours of film and spent 2.5 years editing it. And the stories in the edit, I am absolutely convinced by that. And I guess it's like video, it's like copywriting, isn't it, Tom? It's it's the same when you're doing writing, and we're going to do a show about writing. Actually the written word. But anyway, guys, that is a book that if you're interested, mainly he is a good storyteller, isn't he?
I love this book, and actually it was recommended to me by my first business partner.
Was it?
Because I've always struggled with editing. I'm not a natural editor, but I've worked it, and actually this year more than any other year, I feel like I've really kind of got to grips with a lot of the principles. I've been lucky in as much that my business partner, who is also my wife, is a very natural editor. She has a sort of incisive eye and an ear for story. So I've always been able to sort of not rely on that, but beyond that, actually, to rely on somebody else's talent to kind of take the things that I've shot with people and have it sort of spun into gold. But Una decided to go, and she went and got a job with the NHS just before COVID hit. So it's been a busy old year. I think we can be honest, so with the comms department, and that's been a year of telling really fascinating stories from her perspective, because actually you're trying to get people to understand why a large organization is taking the decisions it's taking, and actually when these decisions are very often very difficult and actually really bad for some people.
Yes.
So I've been very fortunate to have a talented storyteller to work alongside, and I've had to work hard to kind of, and actually part of it was going back and rereading and sort of watching other people's content and going, I really like that cut. And I think we were talking about this earlier, this idea of mindful media consumption, where you actually are looking at things and looking at the cuts and seeing where people are cutting and how covering footage and B-roll is being used, and you look at it all and you think, and you're mentally unpicking the stitching of the films and the video content you're watching, and you can see the people who are really good at it and the people who are kind of developing their craft. And Apocalypse Now is just, it is a truly wonderful film, but I think it took everybody involved to the brink and beyond of madness. You don't, and actually you sort of these films which just sprawl. I mean, actually, a good example of this is a much maligned. It's a complex film. So David Lynch's Dune.
I love it.
Which is objectively a terrible movie in the cut, but he's a man who turned in his first cut, and I think it was 12 hours long, his first cut. They went, this is a bit over the limit we discussed, isn't it, David? And they went, well, yes, but we're going to have to cut it down. And there's this lovely, it illustrates this point where the editor is sometimes given an impossible job with film and video as well, where there is so much content and so much story to tell and you cannot condense it into the space required. And actually we have to, when we're creating our own content, that goes for us as well, because we need to be very mindful that if you have set yourself a 60-second slot, you can get one piece of information out, and that's that's it. No more. Don't attempt to squeeze more into it.
I'm gonna just before I ask you to show the group your artifact, Tom. There's a couple of questions here that or observations that I'd just like us to look at. And thanks for your comment, Doug. In one of my previous marketing jobs, we were focused on creating 15-second videos for Twitter to create click-throughs to longer videos on the website. Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, that's certainly what I try to do on with my videos, is to get people to click through. I mean, that, and there's an art in that, and it probably, I'm not an expert at it yet, wouldn't claim to be. But I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Tom. But I think that's a fairly good way of doing it. I can't really. And then
go look at sort of classic adverts. Go back to the early days of advertising. And look at the TV advertising in its kind of golden age.
Yes.
So 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, when you had seconds to get people to connect to an idea. And that's what we're looking to do here. And I think actually there's an awful lot you can learn from the best TV adverts of yesteryear, because this is about a kind of, and I think this is a phrase of yours actually. It's that return on attention, or something. You know, this idea of, you know, we are looking as people in marketing to gain somebody's attention, and then leverage that attention so that they are taking a desired action. And you know, you look at sort of the combination of good copywriting and good images. That very often sort of was the hallmark of this kind of golden age of advertising. And there's a reason why the growth of television was really driven by advertising. I can just see a question that's popped up there, and it's going to completely wrong foot me, because I can now only think of really terrible TV adverts. Although one that really stuck with me, and it's not. Do you remember the Nationwide did a series of sort of animated adverts in the 80s and late 80s and early 90s, and they, for some reason, those really stuck with me. I mean, you know,
it's interesting that, because I mean, if you're sitting in a room and the TV's on, you know, UK Gold, God forbid, or something like that, and an old advert comes on, you find yourself singing the song.
God, it's
you know,
yeah, exactly. You can sort of, and that's actually the third piece of the puzzle, and probably the most important, because actually the memory of the music is the one that really that is the deep memory, isn't it? You know, you can remember some of the catchphrases, and the imagery, but it's the music which will absolutely connect you to a moment.
So it's an ecosystem, this, isn't it? The storytelling world, it's an ecosystem. Peter also said, that's gold dust, that last couple of minutes. It will define how I structure a short video I'm hoping to do in LinkedIn shortly. Brilliant. That's why we're here, Peter. And in fact, Peter's a former guest on the show. Yeah, and Peter, if you have seen, I'm sure you have seen a little video I did for you, that first 10 seconds is why that video works. And you need to go back to the archive and look at it, folks. But it's basically Peter repeating something 3 times, dat, dat, dat. And I zoom into him with every dat. So it goes dat, dat, dat. Yeah. And it immediately gets the attention and gets the attention of the audience, and they go, right. And they're into the video. And these are the tricks that you need to learn.
I love a push in.
Yeah, there you go. He's got the technical terms for it. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Right, now, get your artifact out. Get your artifact. I'm dying to say that to you all night. Oh, it's an ebook. What on earth is that?
So, Scott, this is a cocktail book that was given to me by my grandfather, and it's kind of been with me for a very long time. It's got a rich and multi-layered history for me personally, and it's in the last year it's kind of come out of storage a little bit. It's come off the shelf a bit more actively. So it's called 100 Cocktails, and it's written by somebody who just goes enigmatically by the name Bernard. We'll get onto who, with a bit of digging, I've worked out who Bernard was.
Right, yeah.
I haven't got a specific name, but I know a little bit about Bernard. But what I love, so it's got an inscription at the front. It says Neil Coxon, Madras, 1945.
Oh my
goodness. And this is in fact it's called 100 Cocktails and How to Mix Them, and it is a book production of the War Economy Standard. So this is a war standard issue cocktail book. And that alone I love.
It's a good story in itself, isn't it? Just in itself, yeah.
At some point somebody went, you know what we're going to use to beat the Axis? Is it bombs? No. Is it bombs? Is it better boats? Is it better tanks? No. It's cocktails, as it happens. We've got this chap. Well, he's not actually a chap. He's a lady called Bernard. Bernard's a lady, and sort of this. I have this image of a sort of a slightly older woman in stout brogues going around all these sort of these kind of bars sampling cocktails and sort of writing these little kind of so a sunshine cocktail is a very pleasant cocktail of medium strength. The top-notch cocktail, however, is a sweet cocktail and is very popular among the fair sex. You have these recipes, and they all come with. I mean, some of them are virtually undrinkable. Some of them are revolting, but a lot of them are really good. But they all sort of come with a little kind of a little bit of sort of small window into the mind of the author, which I love. But I've sort of slowly but surely worked my way through this book over the years with friends and at parties, and it's sort of survived. It's a little bit sort of soggy around the edges and well used, but I remember it sitting on the shelf at my grandparents' house, and just an image of that spine sitting there. And it wasn't until much later that I kind of actually sort of was given it and started using it, and sort of parties at university, and when I was kind of my early drinking years, Bernard's 100 Cocktails and How to Mix Them has been great, and I sort of passed it on as a book to a number of people, and my brother-in-law and his partner, they've come to know and embrace the true word of Bernard, and have worked their way through in a sort of a devotional way, work their way through each of the 100 psalms in the 100 cocktails. and there's one particular one which I can honestly tell you is possibly one of the worst cocktails you will ever drink. And I will read the recipe, and you'll sort of understand why it is such a. If I can find the right page, where are we? It's what's it called? It is called it's the 0 hour.
The 0 hour. I've never heard of that, Tom.
No, there's a good reason. Two dashes of absinthe,
right?
3 dashes of creme de menthe, a quarter measure of brandy, an 1/8 measure of apricot brandy, and an olive. You're thinking,
how do you measure an 1/8?
It sounds revolting on paper, and then you mix it and go, no, that is. I mean, it's almost undrinkable.
Really,
it's undrinkable, and you work your way through, and you're sort of hoping that number 100 is going to be a real barnstormer, and you get to it. No, it wasn't worth the wait, Bernard. You've really let me down.
So if I was to ask you, how much is that book worth to you? What would you say?
Oh God, it's in an incalculable amount, because it connects me to my grandfather, who I loved dearly. It's an anchor for a number of hilarious memories, and also more recently, it's been the sort of motivator for a weekly live that I do called Content and Cocktails in my group. And actually, there we go, Grow Your Business with Video. That's the place, which is my group. And every week, I was like, I have got the kind of brain where I need to incentivize the actions I take, the regular actions I take, in order to make them enjoyable. And so I thought, how am I going to be able to sit down every week and consistently create content for my group? And I thought, well, I could anchor the whole week with a live where I mix a cocktail and just talk nonsense about video for an hour. And it gives me a bit of business to kind of do. If I dry up, I can mix a cocktail and kind of, you know, do a bit of flim flam whilst I get my brain back in gear.
And that explains why Tom's got that's a black velvet you've got, isn't it? Not
in burn. That was more of a conversation we had earlier in the week, isn't it?
Indeed. I didn't have the nerve, so I'm on alcohol-free beer, which is very embarrassing, but it is only a Monday evening. It's quite cool.
I feel like a complete lush.
No, I wish I had now. I'm feeling bad now. But it's actually, Doug's just said it sounds disgusting. Doug, I met Doug. He was behind a cocktail bar, Tom. He's an absolutely brilliant barman. He was back in the day. He's not a barman anymore, but he's one of the best I've ever met in my life. So there you go. That's good to be back.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely revolting. I mean, there are some in here which are kind of you know, just straight up classics, but others which you think you know, they're definitely. I mean, there's a lot of very brown cocktails in here. You mix them, they've all got roughly the same sort of complexion. You think kind of, I know what this is going to taste like, and I know if I have 2 of these, I will be dead.
So, folks, I think Tom has just demonstrated one of the reasons why I was so keen on this idea of ARTEFACT, because one, there's more than 2. There's probably 3 aspects, but one, you'll notice the story that came from that. Now, Tom didn't rehearse that. You know, it's did you, Tom? You didn't rehearse that. You know, he provided the artifact, and it took him on a journey. It took him on a story. So that's the thing about the artifact that can be emergent. The second thing is that I asked him the question, how much is it worth? And he said, oh, it's priceless. You know, you can't put a price on it. He probably said it in much posher words than I would use because he's quite posh, but I've got hair. Anyway. Sorry. I don't care if I offend. It's your problem if you're offended. Anyway, that's another discussion. But you know, the other thing about stories, or rather the artifacts, the story being connected to that book makes it more valuable, particularly for Tom. But if you get the point about, you know, facts tell, stories sell, if Tom put that book onto eBay, he may, I don't know if it's valuable, Tom, I doubt it, but he got a couple of quid for it. If Tom put on eBay with his story, the evidence says he would get up to 2,000% more from the research that's out there, right? So that's the real reason, you know, one of the real reasons why artifacts are so important, because you can remember, you create value, and people are immediately engaged with that story. That's why artifacts are so important. Can I hear somebody defending you? Don't be having a go at the follically challenge.
I like to think as the Jean-Luc Picard look.
Well, you've got me now. You see, I can't argue with that now. So let's when you would go overtime, and we're going overtime, I'm not making any apologies for it though, because it's such a deep and rich area to speak about, because it can just go on, and I suspect Tom will have to meet again and talk about it. But can I ask you to share, you know, what's your fate? And I never asked you this beforehand, so you weren't expecting this question, but if you looked at film directors out there, and is there one in the public consciousness that you really think, yeah, there's something about him or her that really exemplifies the craft of film, the craft of editing? Is there anyone that jumps out?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, so I'll sort of, and I think we'll probably both agree on this. At the moment, I've loved every single film that Denis Villeneuve has. So Arrival, and it's why I was so disappointed about Dune being knocked back into next year, because I was, you know, I was really looking forward to seeing a director that I really love tackling a subject that I kind of tackling a book that I absolutely adore as well. And for me, it's the, and actually, I mean, I adored Blade Runner as the new Blade Runner as well. And I love the original, and his kind of take on that whole world was kind of, I mean, it massively underperformed at the box office, but I think it was a wonderful film, in as much that it was a visual storytelling delight.
Yes.
I have thoroughly enjoyed every single film that he's made. None of them are particularly easy watches, in as much that I sat down and watched Arrival with Una. We actually, in that ending, which I won't spoil it in case anyone hasn't watched it. We took totally different things away from it.
Yeah,
I found it a very hopeful ending. Una turned to me and said, "That was really, really depressing." And we took such different. I felt that was a very kind of a very sort of enjoyable. Those films you sit down and you watch and they leave you feeling like you've had an incredibly fulfilling meal. You feel like you've sat down and you've kind of enjoyed something, and it's satisfying, and it's left you both sated and wanting more simultaneously. That's how I feel about his films.
Yes.
Now, another director that I love, that I really enjoy, is Taika Waititi. So we watched Jojo Rabbit the other night, and because I was really interested, because there was a lot of criticism around the film being tonally very odd, and it is tonally a very odd film, but I think it's very deliberate in that. And you have these kind of these amazing jumps between moments of just complete balmy bonkers to really kind of complete sort of U-turns in sort of in tone, where you'll be presented with really quite striking and harrowing imagery.
Yeah.
And then you'll cut back to kind of comedy Hitler. As a filmmaker, he manages. I think he successfully walks that line. And he's a filmmaker. And I don't know if you've seen A Hunt for the Wilder People, which is a lovely,
Brilliant film.
A really lovely film. And Boy is just, there's he does comedy, but he also does that sort of heart and sort of. I think he's a director who can do sort of the human very well.
Yes.
And actually, I really enjoyed watching his the Thor film, which was huge fun. That was great fun. I watched it with my daughter, and she found it hilarious. There's some of those Marvel films are just they're pretty rubbish.
Some of them, yeah.
But when it's fun source material, and I'm a big fan of popcorn movies as much as I am a fan of kind of meaty kind of I'll quite happily sit down and watch Tarkovsky or kind of the sort of heavier duty art cinema. As much as I will kind of the sort of the lighter fare, but no.
There's a couple that. I mean, I completely. I thought Arrival was a work of art. I thought the storytelling and the non-linear nature of it was unlike, and I'm just going to say what I think, unlike Christopher Tennant's latest Tenet, which is a heap of rubble, just rubbish. It's just rubbish. And I love him. I love him as a director, but that film does not work for me. Maybe I've not seen it yet. But there's a couple of guys that I would add to that list that again we've spoken about before that are, and you warned me this would happen. Once you get into this, you start to watch the film, but you also watch the editing. So one example would be Terrence Malick, who Thin Red Line and brilliant, and he's made some stinking films as well. But again, the way he edits is incredible. And the other one that I'm an absolute fanboy of, Werner Herzog, who, in terms of documentary making, I think there's a lot for people who are making corporate videos in his work, because he really, the way he uses music, the way he uses the voiceover, the way he uses storytelling, you know, he uses time. I mean, there's a moment in, if you've never seen, there's a movie he made called The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, which is about a cave that they found in Chauvet in France, which is one of the oldest caves with cave paintings in the world. And at one moment, and I won't even pretend to do the accent, but at one moment they're in the dark in this cave, surrounded by cave paintings that appear to move with light. He just says to everybody, basically he says, "Shut up." Yeah. And for the next, it's excruciating, almost 30 seconds to a minute, there is nothing on that movie apart from darkness. And then he returns and he says, "I could hear your heartbeat in the darkness."
You could hear his voice.
But it's just brilliant how he surprises you all the time. So that would be certainly one for me. Terrence Malick, although I know his films are quite hard work sometimes, but Werner Herzog, and he's made good movies as well, but I think his documentaries are superb.
I really liked, actually, I can't remember the name of it. It's actually on Netflix. It's the volcano documentary.
Yeah, very good.
I really like that one, because I find volcanoes kind of fascinating and kind of terrifying at the same time. You know, it's what was it? God, I can't. Is it Into the Inferno? That's it. Yeah, Into the Inferno. Yeah, really, you know, it and Grizzly Man, of course, you know, was probably
terrific.
A more kind of, but also when he crops up as actors, it's always good fun. You know,
he plays himself in all the films, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we're coming to the end. We have gone over by half an hour already. And I suspect we could go over for another 2 hours if we keep going. So let's come to the end of this conversation. Yeah. Have you any sort of top 3 tips, or I don't like asking that question normally, but I think I need to ask you it. Is there anything, people who are watching this, maybe watching it as a film, someone who eats it and enjoys it, consumes it. But I know there's at least 2 or 3 people on here that are, you know, keen to think about, you know, getting into making their own videos and getting into making their own film, which we never discussed the difference, but let's not. What would you say to them? What would you say to them, Tom?
Okay. So the first thing is be very, very clear about who you are talking to. So spend time working out who your ideal audience are. Spend time building a profile of them, understanding where they live online, because the reality is, you know, video is online now. Yeah. You know, there are other ways, I guess, to get video into people's lives, but they're very cumbersome and they involve frankly obsolete technology now. So video is online. You need to spend a lot of time, actually, kind of, you know, I've been delivering some training in my group recently, and I was asked this question: how long should we spend doing this? And one of the tasks that I'll often set is one where we have to write 100 statements about the ideal audience member. When I say ideal audience member, I mean the person who, if you could create the perfect person to sit in front of your content, you want to create a picture of this person, because that person exists. They are probably actually your favorite client, the person you love working with the most, and you want to be able to describe that person in detail and work out what their motivations are, what the reasons they tune into you are. Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, this is nothing new. This is marketing 101. This is customer avatar territory. But when you're thinking about audience, if you can have that level of clarity, you can then create content which will connect. And actually, it then doesn't really matter how long your content is, because if you are creating the right stuff for the right people, they will watch and watch and watch and watch, and they will share it with other people who they share interests and values with, and you will end up having, it won't be viral in the kind of the broad sense, but it will be. I'm trying to think of a micro virality. It'll be viral along very specific paths of people.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So that would be my first kind of tip. My second tip is much more sort of technical and tactical. Is get a microphone. Get yourself, if you're creating video content on your phone, just get yourself a cheap mic, because we can forgive bad images, but we can't forgive bad sound. Think of the amount of times you've been onto YouTube and have kind of tuned in. You've asked a question. I did it recently, trying to fix a dishwasher, and the first video that came up was the perfect one, and the title was like the model of dishwasher I had and exactly the problem I had. I clicked onto it, and the sound was terrible. I couldn't understand a word the guy was saying, and I clicked off. That was it. Done. I wasn't going to give it a another chance, because I wasn't going to persevere with bad quality sound. So that's the other thing. The third thing is a bit of a mindset thing. So very often we stop ourselves. People stop themselves from getting in front of the camera because they sort of have a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in their heads that's really getting in the way of them sharing their know-how with their ideal audience. And there's a whole bunch of reasons that I'm really kind of fascinated by, the reasons why we don't like being in front of the camera. And I think there are some fairly good kind of sort of reasons for that, backed up by some fairly recent sort of neuroscience research around that. But that isn't my area of expertise, and I kind of dig my way through whatever papers I can and try and use my history of art degree to attempt to understand the scientific writings of other people, which it's a difficult fit, I'll be honest.
Yeah, but artists are human too.
Yeah, yes. But I think the one thing we have to do is be kind to ourselves. And actually the language we use around how, very often when people describe and talk to me about how they feel about themselves on camera, a phrase that gets used so often is, I hate seeing myself on camera. And I'll pose the question, and I said, if your best friend came to you and said, have a look at this video I've made, what do you think? You would never turn around to them and say, you know what? I really hate the way you look on camera. But we're so quick to do to ourselves something that we'd never dream of doing to somebody else. And I think actually that kind of narrative that we sort of push on ourselves can actually be quite damaging. And it can, you've got to understand that when you look at yourself on camera, all you're doing is seeing yourself as other people see you.
Yeah.
And that in its own right is that can be quite a heavy lift for some people. It certainly was for me. I remember looking at myself the first time on camera and thinking, who's that fat bald bloke? It's like, oh God, it's me. Because in my head, my self-image is stuck or certainly was before getting in front of the camera, was stuck somewhere around the age of 24, 25, when I had a beautiful head of hair. And obviously, that's just not the truth. But all of it is me seeing myself as other people see me. And once you get over that, fine. You'll be much happier about the camera. So that's my sort of mindset tip. That's my tech tip. And that's my kind of strategic tip.
Oh, very good, Tom. That's fantastic. Now, there's another couple of questions, if I can just hold you back for a few more minutes. You probably saw the one from Joe about, do I need a camera as well as a microphone? Or does a mobile phone do the job?
Just use your phone. Get a microphone, stick it into your phone, use that.
Some of the biggest YouTubers on the planet use iPhones.
Yeah. Because they're good cameras.
I mean, I use an iPhone for my channel, Joe. Always an iPhone, because it records it in 4K. There's a whole suite of software that you can download for less than £100. Yeah. Way less than £100 that'll enable you to use your camera like an digital SLR. So You definitely don't need a fancy camera. In fact, a lot of people jump to the tech, don't they, Tom? They jump almost to doing it. I mean, get a simple, what they call a little lav mic, which is a little one you see on people's shirts. That's all you need, and then you can go up to the likes of what Tom and I are using. I mean, my one here isn't very expensive. It's less than £70. I mean, you don't need to go crazy with even the mic stuff, but the lav mics are great. I mean, the technology is terrific. Yeah. You really don't need to go too far. Tom, that's been fantastic. And I can't believe we've been on for as long as we've been on already. It's ridiculous.
We could go. I feel like I could go on a lot longer, but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Scott. It's been great.
We must come back. I tell you what we'll do. How about we come back after the new Dune film's been released and we've both seen it?
I would love that.
Yeah, we'll break out of the Artefact structure and we'll do a review of the new Dune film.
I cannot wait. I'm excited by the TV series as well.
Say again?
I'm excited by his TV series as well. He's doing it. Yeah.
Just and I love the fact. Sorry, I was going. Bugger it. It's my show. I love the fact when he made the ad for the new Dune film. He deliberately copied the ad for Lynch's film, and all these people are complaining, saying it looks like Lynch's film. That's because he copied it. So I'd be so disappointed if it was a letdown. And there's even some weird people out there saying they don't like the fact they're using Pink Floyd as the theme tune.
I think it's spot on. It's spot on.
Yeah, exactly. Get a life. Get with the program. Anyway, yeah. Tom, thank you ever so much. That's been an absolute pleasure. I knew it would be. The gold you've given our tuner-inners, I don't know what to call them, so I'm calling them tuner-inners. It has been terrific, as you've seen from the comments. So thank you very much. And it's always one of the things that Tom actually says to the group in which I'm also involved is, always remember to leave an audience with a question or with a call to action. And for those of you who have tuned in before, I've got a call to action, and my call to action is watch out for stories this week, because as you've seen tonight, it could be a little book that changes your world. Thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. I can't wait to see you all again next week. Tom, thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Scott. Good night.